FTR return. Jon Moxley debuts his new favourite weapon, a frickin' brick. And all competing members of Strong Submission Style Specialists, the Blackpool Combat Club, tap out. William Regal leaves you all alone for 3 months and now this? I'm Oli Davis, and this is my review of AEW Revolution 2023. In about 10 minutes.
Support WrestleTalk!
The pre-show only had one match on for a change. Rather than the usual template of Orange Cassidy comedy match, Major Rampage feud blow off, and Eddie Kingston versus a Japanese wrestling legend he's requested to beat up. Instead, we just had the fun crowd warmer of Mark Briscoe and the Lucha Bros beating the varsity athletes. But the real star of the pre-show was RJ City, who was anchoring the broadcast like it was an award ceremony red carpet, which included him interviewing Danhausen dressed in Homer Simpson's moo-moo dress, and him recommending Toni Storm call her running hip attack sweet cheek music. JR welcomed us to the main card by saying, if you like a lot of wrestling, this is the show for you. He wasn't kidding. There was a lot of wrestling on this show. I'd still argue, too much, with many moments and feuds not getting the time they deserve to breathe. However, its 3 hours, 50-minute runtime was a massive improvement on Double or Nothing's 4.5 hours, with the match order here being perfectly booked for it to zip along nicely. Fittingly, the main card began with AEW's Memento feud, which started with the ending of Starks beating Jericho already, and concluded with Starks beating Jericho again. They wrestled with a physical intensity that got over their hate for each other, and the finish was really well done. Action Andretti stopped Sammy Guevara from interfering, but Jericho used the bat behind the referee's back. It seemed all over. The heel was about to triumph when Starks awesomely caught Jericho's Judas effect. It's not Judas effective, and then won with a Rochambeau. With no chance to breathe or play a video package, we then went straight into Christian versus Jungle Boy, which would have really benefited from a recap of their feud, considering most of it happened 6 months ago, but all was forgiven because Christian wrestled in a tank top adapted turtleneck. Who needs emotional context when you've got a heel who looks like such a wanker? The finish was again booked really well. Jungle Boy hit the concerto he couldn't bring himself to do a few weeks back, signaling character growth, and delicately sold the inner turmoil of closing the casket lid on his former mentor Christian, considering how he'd buried his own father several years ago. Christian and Jungle Boy, a story and feud that has spanned 1.5 years, didn't get a video package. The Elite vs House of Black, a story barely 10 days old with no real character conflict, got a full pre-produced rundown. What are the rules? What are the rules? Again, it doesn't matter when you've got either Christian wrestling in a turtleneck or the Elite and House of Black wrestling, in general. The match began with Kenny Omega and Buddy Matthews doing the pro wrestling equivalent of that Spider-Man meme where they're both pointing at each other, and proceeded to have perfectly booked spot after perfectly booked spot. Kenny and Malachi trading one-winged angel and black mass attempts, then staring at each other while sitting down as the crowd chanted, "This is awesome." Super kick parties. Julia Hart interfering, getting bumped hard off the apron, and Kenny just shrugging like, I don't care. Great near fall after great near fall after great near fall. If you listed every spot and interaction you'd like to see from these two teams together, you got them here, perfectly executed, and then some. Shockingly though, after multiple big spots that felt like the ending, the House of Black won with a Dante's Inferno on Matt Jackson. We have new Trios champions. A definite welcome surprise on what was otherwise a pretty predictable card. And I'm overjoyed Malachi Black has finally won a belt in AEW. What an underwhelming title run for the Elite though. The team these championships were designed for. Their only feud since winning them from Death Triangle was Top Flight and AR Fox. Can't believe I'm saying this, but Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks need some serious, much better direction in this company. Or another company. Elite to WWE confirmed. Jamie Hayter successfully defending her women's title against Saraya and Ruby Soho was the shortest match on the show at only 10 minutes. There wasn't much to note in the match because the memorable part was in the angle that followed. After losing to a crucifix pin from Hayter, Soho initially threw the heels out to then turn on Jamie and Britt Baker. Saraya and Toni Storm joined her to spray paint the unconscious bodies. Bit of a rush match, but this is the most substantial story we've had in the women's division since Baker Rosa. Hangman Page versus Jon Moxley could have been match of the night if the main event wasn't even more match of the night. They continued their streak of every match being better than their last, and the way this fourth encounter topped their previous 3 was stunning in its simplicity. Add barbed wire to it. There's a table. Add barbed wire to it. Here's 2 chairs set up back to back. Add barbed wire to it. Hangman Page is going to do a moonsault off the top rope to the outside. Add barbed wire to it. This was a bloodbath of a Texas death match, with both men gushing crimson from the first few minutes, thanks to a gruesome triangle choke from Moxley where he stabbed Hangman's head with a fork. Fork him up, Moxley. Oh God, I feel ill. And just when you think barbed wire and forks are enough, Jon Moxley got out some bricks. He stomped Hangman's hand between them, aka a hang-hand sandwich, but whatever Page threw back at Moxley like Kelly Clarkson only seemed to make him stronger. So the Hangman had to hang a man. Page hit a buckshot lariat while Mox was wrapped in a chain, and then used that chain to hang him from the top rope, causing Moxley to tap out. A definitive ending which somehow keeps Mox looking awesome despite essentially quitting while building Hangman strong, potentially for MJF's next challenger. Samoa Joe and Wardlow did their best to follow that with a fast-paced hoss fight. They went 10 minutes, whereupon Wardlow made Joe pass out in a rear naked choke. Another hugely definitive strong win. While the story was always set up this way, Wardlow had to win as soon as he invoked his father dying from cancer. I'm not excited for another Wardlow title run. AEW haven't been able to book him to the same height since he split from MJF, and it's at the expense of Joe, who has been a really great TNT champion. Joe and Wardlow and the following four-way tag title match were actually very smart sorbets to refresh the crowd for the impending marathon of a main event. And while the tag title build has been fundamentally bad, the Guns retaining over the Acclaimed, Team TNA, and Cassidy and Danhausen was a lot of fun. There were plenty of comedy spots centered around AEW's humor trinity of Danhausen, Cassidy, and Jarrett, including one amazing near fall for Team TNA. Put the titles on Jarrett, Tony, you coward! But really, Danhausen was just there to get pinned by the Ass Boys in a deflating ending. Unfortunately, the gamble to put the belts onto the Guns hasn't paid off. They haven't grown into them, it's undermined a once hot tag division, and the Acclaimed felt like an afterthought in this match. Thankfully though, the time for passive-aggressive tweets and CM Punk PR podcasts is over. FTR made their return in the Guns post-match interview, restoring so much credibility to the division, Dax spontaneously just started bleeding from his face. But now it's time for the main event. A 1-hour Iron Man match between Bryan Danielson and MJF for the AEW Championship. From the entrances to the final bell, to the extra time after the final bell, this was pro wrestling perfection. The story, the characters, the presentation, the booking. MJF entered with an orchestra whilst wearing a devil mask. Excalibur said that's more for Max's confidence, as he can't intimidate Danielson. It was a story of conflict that played out through the whole stipulation. Not just of two men who hate each other fighting over the most coveted prize in the promotion and arguably to them, the world, but also of two men against the very match concept, of two men against their own cardiovascular conditioning, and as Danielson's shoulder and Max's knee deteriorated, against their own body parts. Every moment felt like it had at least 3 different layers. Danielson brought back his old I've got till 5 gimmick, a neat bit of nostalgia, but really a surgically precise foreshadowing of when Max tapped later on. After getting to the ropes, MJF knew Danielson would hold on until 5 otherwise. But what makes Max so special is these added layers of conflict. He's not just wrestling Danielson, the Iron Man stip in his own physical body, he's wrestling his own internal neuroses and 10,000 fans in the arena. He worked the crowd, chucking water over a non-planted young fan, while never making the drama feel overly gimmicky. They went 3 falls each over an hour that sped by. Danielson's last being from a regal stretch, but Max held on for a whole minute while in a heel hook to run down the clock. Tony Khan declared a sudden death restart that escalated the drama even more. MJF kicked out from Danielson's knee, but he whacked Danielson in the head with the oxygen canister he was being tended to by the medical team and put him in his own submission, the label lock. Even that wasn't enough for a bit. Danielson didn't pass out, but MJF held on and on and on, and finally, shockingly, Danielson tapped out. A super strong, decisive finish to put Max over, but one that protects Danielson's finishing move. All that time in the Dynamite build, we thought MJF was working over Bryan's arm for his Salt of the Earth submission, when he ended up winning with the label lock. Absolutely excellent. What did you think of AEW Revolution? Let me know in the comments. There is a 100% perfect show in this card. The trios match as your opener, the women's 3-way for the heel turn, Mox versus Page, a comedy tag title 4-way complete with FTR return, then that Iron Man main event. Would have only been a 3-hour show then too. AEW Revolution is 98%. But what about over in WWE? Here's Adam Blampied with 10 changes Triple H could make to WWE after WrestleMania.
We generally agree that WWE creative has been a smidge better under Triple H than under Vince McMahon. I mean, sure, at the moment it appears that the Lesnar-Omos match is real and not a massive prank, but there's still time for Trips to change that, right? And while we're talking about changes, there are still some glaring issues with the WWE product that Trips hasn't touched. So hey, while we're asking for stuff, I'm Adam from WrestleTalk, and here are 10 changes Triple H could make to WWE after WrestleMania 39.